The bird of prey was arguably the most feared symbol of the Klingon Empire, and it was certainly the most well-known class of vessel in the Klingon fleet. There were many different kinds of birds of prey that the Klingons operated. These ships were small, but they were well armed and incredibly agile. Burrell-class birds of prey were quite effective as scouts and in full-scale battles. They could be deployed in squadrons, but could easily outmaneuver and overwhelm larger vessels. In this video, we're going to be taking an extensive look at every aspect of its iconic Klingon design. Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host, Captain Jack. If you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then hit that subscribe button for more stories from the final frontier. Click the links in the description to join our Discord server or find us on social media. If you're interested in supporting the channel, click that join button and receive some extra perks and chat with the Trek Central crew. Okay, engage. Or should I say, Qapla'. The Burrell-class bird of prey was originally created for the Klingon Imperial fleet during the Klingon Empire's short-lived alliance with the Romulan Star Empire. According to the expanded media, the Burrell-class bird of prey was introduced in the 2270s, and ships of the class were originally produced at the Kronos Orbital Factory base. The Burrell drew heavily on the designs of older birds of prey, but it incorporated a number of Romulan influences, most notably a cloaking device. In the final decades of the 23rd century, the Burrell was one of the most common Klingon military craft, and it continued to serve well into the 24th century. Like Starfleet's Miranda class and Excelsior class starships, the Burrell was long-lived and a reliable design. By the mid-24th century, some Burrell class birds of prey had been relegated to military surplus or sold to scrapyards, but many others remained in service. The design of the Burrell-class bird of prey was even upscaled and made into the much larger Covert-class bird of prey in the 24th century, further illustrating the versatility of its design. According to the Deep Space Nine technical manual, the Burrell-class bird of prey was classified as a scout, and it clocked in at a mass of 236,000 metric tons. It had a length of 157.76 meters, a wingspan of 161.54 meters, and a height of 98.54 meters. It had roughly the same silhouette as most other Klingon birds of prey, consisting of a large, bulbous aft section and a teardrop-shaped head, connected by a sort of connecting strut, with two downswept wings tipped with disruptor cannons attached to the aft section. The Burrell-class bird of prey had both shields and ablative armor plating, as well as artificial gravity, atmospheric scrubbers, and all the other ordinary creature comforts of a modern starship. The aft section of a Burrell-class bird of prey was the largest part of the ship. Here you'd find the engineering section, typically like most Starfleet ships. The ship's fusion reactors and propulsion systems were also housed in the aft section, including the ship's warp core and both of the impulse engines. The Burrell had two impulse engines, which were stacked on top of each other at the far aft of the ship. The Burrell had a high thrust-to-mass ratio and was both fast and agile, as you'd expect from a scout ship. Sources do differ on the nature of the Burrell class's warp drive. Some claim that Burrell was propelled by a single warp nacelle housed within the aft section, while many expanded media sources claim that the bird of prey's wings function as nacelles instead. The Burrell had a cruising warp speed of warp 8, but it could reach warp 9.6 according to the DS9 technical manual, and the slingshot effect would enable it to reach warp 9.8. Burrell-class bird of preys could sustain atmospheric flight, and were even capable of landing on planetary surfaces. When landed, the ship's wings would be angled slightly upwards, and landing struts would extend from the bottom of the hull. A large boarding ramp was located along the underside of the ship's aft section, and the aft part of the Burrell also featured large external bulkheads leading to a cargo bay. The aft portion of the Burrell also contained the bulk of the ship's crewed decks. The ship's interior was divided into 5 decks, and those decks were notoriously cramped and uncomfortable. Unlike the sleek and orderly interiors of Starfleet vessels, the interiors of the birds of prey were compact and strictly functional in design. Pipes and other mechanical elements lined the walls, while the corridors were constantly filled with smoke. In keeping with Klingon tastes, the interior lighting of the bird of prey tended to be dim and reddish. The aft decks of the Burrell housed most of the ship's important rooms. This included the cargo bay, which took up a large part of the lower reaches of the ship. The main bay was roughly 20 meters long, and had just enough room to carry 2 adult humpback whales.
Admiral, there be whales here!
Closely adjacent to the cargo bay was the engine room, with a dilithium chamber directly adjacent. The Burrell's other engineering stations, including main engineering and the warp core, were also housed in the ship's aft section. Other features of the Burrell's aft decks include a small medical ward, a number of differently sized transporter rooms, the mess hall, and a computer room. The cramped quarters that most of the ship's crew are relegated to were also located in the aft section. The rooms are typically as uncomfortable as the rest of a bird of prey's interior, although the captain's quarters were usually more spacious. Finally, the aft part of a Burrell-class bird of prey housed the ship's escape pods, of which seem to have been a total of 12. The Burrell-class's wings were routed on either side of the aft section, and as previously mentioned, some sources do claim that they housed parts of the ship's warp systems. They were also lined with shield generator plates, and the ship's main disruptor cannons were mounted on the wing tips. For landing, the wingtips would be extended upwards. For combat, they would be extended downwards. When the ship was in flight, but not combat, the wings would usually be locked in an in-between position. The front and aft portions of the Burrell were connected by a narrow, densely armoured strut that contained a long central corridor which ran between the two ends of the ship. The head of the bird of prey was mostly given over the ship's command decks. The bridge, ready room, and possibly also the officers' quarters were housed in this section. The bridge of a Burrell-class bird of prey was highly modular, and it came in a number of different variants. In most cases, these all featured a view screen at the front end of a bridge, a central command chair for the captain, and up to a dozen other stations located in a ring around the captain's chair. Externally, the bird of prey's head housed the ship's cloaking device, its navigational deflectors, a docking port, and its torpedo launcher. Once again, according to the Deep Space Nine technical manual, the Burrell-class bird of prey had a standard crew of 12, plus flight crew and embarked troops. However, a skeleton crew of 6 could operate a Burrell in a pinch, and some ships had crews of up to 36. Like any Klingon ship worth its dilithium, the Burrell-class bird of prey was well armed. The main weapons of the Burrell were a pair of powerful wingtip-mounted disruptor cannons, which had a broad field of fire and considerable stopping power. The Burrell also boasts at least one torpedo launcher, located on the underside of the head. Some ships of the class also had a secondary torpedo launcher in the stern. The Burrell class also featured 2 tractor beam projectors, one directly aft of a forward torpedo launcher and one on the underside of the aft section. Perhaps the Burrell's most important weapon, however, wasn't a weapon at all, it was the ship's cloaking device. Based on Romulan cloak designs that the Klingons adopted during the brief 23rd century Klingon alliance, the bird of prey's cloaking device granted it numerous tactical advantage. Adopted during the brief 23rd century Klingon-Romulan alliance, the bird of prey's cloaking device granted it numerous tactical advantages, which gave it a fighting chance against much larger vessels. These cloaking devices weren't perfect. Early model Burrell-class bird of preys were incapable of firing their weapons or raising their shields while cloaked, and Klingon cloaking devices were incapable of masking certain forms of radiation. When a bird of prey decloaked, there was a window of a few seconds in which it would be unshielded and vulnerable. Although a few opponents were cunning enough to take advantage of this, a more advanced Burrell-class variant, developed in the 2290s, could fire under cloak, which made these advanced bird of preys much more of a threat. From its introduction in the 2270s, well into the 24th century, the Burrell-class bird of prey was one of the mainstays of the Klingon fleet. They were versatile and reliable, able to be deployed for a variety of combat situations. Individual Burrell-class bird of prey could be deployed as scout ships, which could advance ahead of the main fleet groups under cloak and engage enemies as necessary. In larger battles, they performed as skirmish ships, striking fast, hard, and without warning. Their agility and small target profile made them difficult to hit, and though they were outgunned by most larger starships, when manned by a skilled crew, they could still bring down larger vessels. The Burrell's cloaking device also allowed it to carry out devastating surprise attacks, catching enemy vessels when their shields were down. In the roughly 2 decades between the introduction of the Burrell class and the signing of the Khitomer Accords, there were a handful of recorded engagements between these birds of prey and Starfleet vessels. Perhaps the most infamous of these happened in orbit of the Genesis planet in 2285, in which a bird of prey, commanded by Commander Kruge, engaged the original USS Enterprise. The bird of prey had previously destroyed the civilian freighter, Merchantman, and the USS Grissom, but it was captured by the crew of the Enterprise in a battle. This bird of prey, jokingly referred to as the HMS Bounty, was then used to travel back to the 20th century to rescue a pair of humpback whales. In 2293, a new prototype variant of the Burrell-class bird of prey, commanded by General Chang, was used to assassinate Chancellor Gorkon in a bid to sabotage the Khitomer Conference. Chang's plot to spark a war between the Federation and the Klingon Empire by framing Starfleet for Gorkon's death ultimately fell through. Chang and his bird of prey were destroyed by the USS Enterprise A and the USS Excelsior. After the signing of the Khitomer Accords, the Federation of the Klingon Empire normalized relations and eventually became allies. But the Klingons had other enemies, and they continued to deploy Burrell-class bird of prey against them well into the 24th century. These agile ships struck fear into the hearts of the Romulans and Cardassians alike, and they played an especially prominent role in the Dominion War of the 2370s. The Burrell-class bird of prey saw use in every major battle of the Dominion War, in which the Klingons took part. Despite its age, the Burrell performed extremely well in conflict thanks to its agility, firepower, and cloaking abilities. A Burrell could engage multiple Jem'Hadar fighters and come out on top in the hands of a seasoned commander, and these bird of prey were common enough that they could be deployed in large squadrons. In some battles of the Dominion War, a single Burrell-class bird of prey had a significant effect on the battle outcome. In the second Battle of Deep Space Nine, covering fire from the IKS Rotaran gave the US's Defiant all the time it needed to activate a field of self-replicating mines at the mouth of a Bajoran wormhole, something that played a vital role in the course of the whole war. The Rotaran later single-handedly destroyed the Dominion's Monarch shipyards, something that a whole Klingon fleet had previously failed to accomplish. In Operation Return, and both battles of Chintoka, among others, the Klingons deployed the Burrell class in large numbers, using them to overwhelm and destroy enemy vessels upon swarm tactics. In these battles, birds of prey were the backbone of the Klingon fleet groups, supporting the Klingons' larger Vulture-class cruisers and suppressing attack wings of Jem'Hadar fighters. In the end, the Burrell-class bird of prey played a key role in the Allies' victories in the Dominion War, and several ships were sighted of the Dominion's final defeat in the Battle of Cardassia. The Burrell-class bird of prey was originally designed for the third Star Trek film, The Search for Spock, and it went through quite the development process before ending up as the ship we know and love. Originally, the antagonists of Star Trek 3 were going to be the Romulans, operating a Romulan bird of prey, but in the early drafts of the film's script, the Klingons became the main antagonists instead. Nonetheless, the bird of prey remained in the script. Some early drafts suggest that this bird of prey was a Romulan ship, and the Klingons had stolen it, but by the final draft, the bird of prey had become a Klingon-manufactured starship, though its original designation remained. Harve Bennett, the film's writer and producer, decided to keep the bird of prey name, mostly because it sounded suitably Klingon, and because the original series had established that the Klingons and Romulans had exchanged military technology during a period of an alliance at one point. The original studio model for the Burrell-class bird of prey was designed by ILM art directors Nilo Rodis and David Carson, based on a few pointers by Leonard Nimoy, who wanted the ship to look like a raptor swooping in to attack. Both the exterior model and interior set were explicitly designed in contrast to the aesthetics of the Enterprise. The interior would be grimy, clunky, and noisy, instead of clean, sleek, and peaceful, while the exterior would be brightly coloured and decorative, with its wings layered with a feather-shaped plating to distinguish a bird of prey from a smooth-hulled Enterprise. As the Klingons were a warrior species, the ship would also be heavily armed, and its weapons would be prominent in the design. Inspired by Rodis' idea that the ship would resemble a bodybuilder flexing her muscles, George added a few additional design flourishes derived from the equipment of an American football player, giving the ship's head a vaguely helmeted shape and adding large radiated grills at the base of the wings. This model actually featured internal motors for articulating the wings, and it was used to depict the bird of prey in all of the original series era film appearances, as well as in the Next Generation and early seasons of Deep Space Nine. A new CGI model for the bird of prey was created by Foundation Imaging for Deep Space Nine's 6th season, and it went on to represent the ship in all of its subsequent appearances. So that's a look at the Burrell-class bird of prey, a classic of the Klingon fleet. If you'd like us to take a look at another Klingon ship design, let us know in the comments. And if you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore, and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.